Right now, we're in sort of a weird place in crypto. It's a little bit like that moment right before you start the campfire. It's like in our case, we spent the last 4 years going around collecting all the tinder and all the kindling. We've got a giant pile of wood, and all we need to do is light the tinder, get the tinder to ignite the kindling. And then once the kindling is crackling enough, we just need to put the wood on the fire, and everybody's sort of standing around the fire. Only in our case, the person who's going to light the fire may just be the administration in Washington. And we're all sort of wondering, are they going to pull out a matchbook and sort of fumble with the matchbook and try match after match, not quite lighting the fire until they're out of matches? Or are they going to whip out a flamethrower and turn that baby on and make sure we see the biggest fire we've ever seen? If you don't care at all what kicks off the good times as long as they come, or if you're finding value in these videos, please consider delegating to the Army of Spies DRep address and the Army of Spies stake pool, ticker AOS. Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for joining. Daniil is here. Daniil was first. Ada Eclipse is here. Mission Zambia Stake Pool is here. Good morning. Mission Zambia Stake Pool says we had a great launch meeting of the Zambia Cardano Hub. We got to introduce a number of students to blockchain and Cardano. We hope to continue having regular meetups at different universities here. Excellent. Sounds excellent. Jay Marie says he is stoned out of his mind. Let's go. Frazek is here. Bindocam is here. Utis Frichov is here. What's up? Let's go. Let's go. Utis Frichov says that flamethrower guy better hope those logs don't start rolling. Yeah, we'll talk about that. I think that's possible. That's a possibility. We're dealing with some wild boys here. It's possible. Anything's possible. James Syracuse is here. We know Jay Marie and Bindocam are both here. Bindocam says, light that up. Light that bitch up. Okay. So I feel like what's going on is we all know everything's kind of primed. Like crypto is sort of standing there like our body is ready, right? Like the meme. We're ready to go. We've been gathering the kindling, gathering the tinder for the last 4 years. We've been ready to go for a while. Boca de Zaravla is here. I'm here from the Fiat Mines. Oh, live from the Fiat Mines. Thank you for joining from the Fiat Mines. Appreciate it. I think everybody knows we've been ready to go. We've got all the fuel ready for the fire. We just kind of need something to kick things off. We weren't quite ready in 2025. We didn't have the liquidity. We were experiencing sort of, contraction of the Fed balance sheet. We've talked a lot about that recently, so we won't delve into that right now. But we had contraction of the Fed balance sheet, and we were waiting for these legislative measures to be put in place. We were waiting for new laws, a new, common sense regulatory framework for crypto, which we badly need and still need. We still don't quite have the, Senate version of the Clarity Act, a market structure bill. Hopefully that's coming this month. They keep swearing it's coming this month. Whether it comes this month or next month, as long as it's soon, we're going to be okay for 2025 on the regulatory front. It looks like, based on what happened last week, and as we discussed quite a bit, it looks like we're going to be good on the liquidity front. In fact, quite a few other commentators came out this weekend and we're sort of predicting the same kinds of good things for all risk assets that we talked about last week, based on what the Fed is doing right now and that 40 billion a month. A lot of predictions that 40 billion a month in T-bills is quickly going to become, a larger number of more long-term treasury securities, down the road. That's what a lot of commentators are saying. Who knows if they're right or not? Who knows? But things are looking very good on the liquidity front, on the regulatory front. Now we just kind of need to kick off the party. We need to start the party. We need to light up the fire. James Syracuse says, I heard the other day that Google integrated stablecoin payments, but I looked on YouTube and didn't see that. So not sure if it's true or what they started accepting stables in. I'd be curious. If you see anything, tag me. I would love to see this. DVNCOO says, "Let's go, let's go, let's go." Is it DVNC? I try to read this as Da Vinci every time I see it, but DVNCOO, let's go. So there are a couple different things. I sort of feel like they do have a flamethrower. We've got some wild boys. First, let's be clear. We got some wild boys in Washington. Nobody knows what they're going to do from day to day. I don't think they know what they're going to do from day to day. But I do think they've been thinking about crypto for a long time. And there's a certain level of familial personal pressure on the president on crypto. It's like we've got these crypto lobbyists built into his family. His two older sons and the young son, they are crypto lobbyists, like right in the president's family. So I feel like there's some familial pressure there. So I feel like they are fire starter. If the current administration in Washington is our fire starter, I feel like they are standing around the campfire with a flamethrower, and they're just sort of like figuring out like which side of the fire they're going to be standing on when they turn that thing on. And they're like checking to make sure the flamethrower is going to work, and like kind of fiddling with it. And it might sputter a little bit when they kick it on, but it seems like we're going to have something like this. It sort of feels like a lot of energy is going to go into crypto. If ever a lot of energy was going to come out of the White House and it was going to be directed to the benefit of crypto, it feels like 2026 is the moment when that's going to happen. And it could come in a lot of different forms. But just as an example of how this might happen, here's a bill that actually was proposed in November. And we haven't talked about that bill a lot on this channel, but it's worth looking at this as an example of the kind of flamethrower we could be talking about. So we all know that this current administration has talked a lot about a national strategic reserve that could involve any number of different cryptocurrencies. At one point, famously, there was the tweet that included Cardano, and then that was retracted quickly, and that led to a lot of the drama. Charles not going to the big meeting, all that kind of stuff. But there is this bill. This is a little in the direction of that flamethrower thing. This is like one way in which that could happen. So this thread says, breaking, the US just unlocked the biggest Bitcoin demand driver in history. Congress just introduced the Bitcoin for America Act. Americans will be able to pay federal taxes in Bitcoin with zero capital gains tax. Whenever they start saying things like zero capital gains, I start getting excited, because while taxes kind of just sound like this administrative thing, that doesn't really matter. It's like, give me my money first, I'll worry about the taxes later. It actually drives growth in assets when those assets have preferential tax treatment like this. So what's being implied here, and we'll confirm this in just a second, in this proposed bill, so this is not a law. Who knows if a bill like this could even be passed? But the fact is, when a bill is proposed, that means there's a discussion. There's a discussion around these issues. That is very good for us. This is the kind of thing that could light off the fire. This is a big deal. So the idea is you could pay your taxes, and this is just an idea at this point. Remember, this is just an idea. There's no certainty that anything like this can actually happen, but just the fact it's being discussed in the form of a proposed bill is important for us. So the idea is that Americans could pay their US taxes in Bitcoin, and they would not pay any taxes on the gains they had on the Bitcoin they used to pay those taxes. So you could have a giant tax bill, pay it with your crypto, pay it with your Bitcoin at least, and not pay any taxes on the amount you paid. So this post implies that this math is brutal. IRS collects 5.2 trillion a year. Even 5% opt-in is 260 billion, so quarter trillion in annual BTC inflows. 10% is over a half trillion. No ETFs, no mining subsidies, no speculation. Pure, unstoppable, taxpayer-driven accumulation. This isn't a bill. This is monetary engineering at planetary scale. Bitcoin becomes de facto state-backed collateral. Volatility gets absorbed by sovereign scale. Scarcity intensifies while adoption normalizes. One law turns the IRS into the world's largest Bitcoin buyer. Bitcoin won't replace the dollar. It's about to start backing it. So, I mean, you can come to whatever conclusions you want if something like this were to happen. But some of this is true. the IRS would become could become the biggest buyer of Bitcoin ever if something like this were put in place, because that kind of preferential tax treatment is going to get real attractive to hold Bitcoin for a cycle and then pay your taxes in Bitcoin. And obviously, what happens to Bitcoin when good things happen to Bitcoin, it is generally good for crypto as a whole. So this could be a huge driver. And then you get all that Bitcoin sort of taken out of circulation. If the IRS is holding it, I mean, the idea is the IRS would take it in as tax payments and then it would go into the strategic reserve. So if the strategic reserve all of a sudden becomes the biggest buyer of Bitcoin and they're just holding that Bitcoin out of circulation, you know what happens: supply and demand. All of a sudden, supply goes down in a way, maybe in a way, depending on how much participation there'd be in something like this, maybe in a way that supply has never gone down before in Bitcoin. And we're familiar with Bitcoin supply going down because we experience the Bitcoin block happening every, so many years. So this could be that kind of flamethrower incident. Like, I feel like the whole crypto space is sort of primed. We've been waiting. We all thought it was going to happen in 2025. Didn't happen. No liquidity. We didn't have regulatory clarity. 2026, those things are lining up. Something just needs to kick off the fire. So Jay Marie says, yes, I also read that Google was going to give creators an option to be paid in stables. That must mean they're about to integrate crypto wallets, etc. Oh, it might have been somebody saying it on a previous, in the comments of a previous video here, but I have heard something about stables, creators being paid in stables for videos. So it's interesting. I mean, any adoption like that of crypto on a large tech platform like Google's platforms generally, including YouTube, is going to be good for crypto. It's going to be net good for crypto for sure. D9U is here. Thank you for joining. Dr. Doke is here. Happy Monday. Okay. Otis Fricho says, sent you one link in the YouTube stablecoin payment question on X. Okay, thank you. GG Capo is here, finally catching the live stream. Thank you for joining. Otis Fricho says, with BTC for taxes, I would do that just to make sure my taxes are going to the crypto reserve. Yeah, I mean, a lot of crypto people, I mean, if you have the choice, and you can, you could, buy some Bitcoin and pay your taxes in Bitcoin, sort of knowing instead of selling your Bitcoin to whatever counterparty on whatever centralized exchange or non-centralized exchange, and it just sort of remaining in circulation, it's kind of a different motivation if you know that Bitcoin is going to be taken out of circulation, and with every dollar of taxes you pay, you're taking $1 at the moment of Bitcoin out of circulation. I think there'd be a lot of ideological adoption of this. At the same time, there are a lot of people who've had their Bitcoin for a long time and don't want to part with their Bitcoin. I probably fall into that category in some ways. In some ways it'd be hard to part with my Bitcoin, but at the same time, no capital gains. No capital gains. Very attractive. Very, very attractive. So here's so in that post, if you want to see Warren Davidson talk about this, there's a video right here where he actually talks about this proposed bill, but introduced bill. So here's his description of the bill. He sort of gives you the normal kinds of sound bites here, written sound bites in this case, of the benefits and value of Bitcoin. But when you actually get into the bill, so right here, if we pull up the bill, I wanted to confirm, are we really talking about no capital gains? So I found this section of the bill. No gain or loss shall be recognized by a taxpayer on the transfer of Bitcoin to the United States, including to a financial agent of the United States acting pursuant to subsection E, in satisfaction of any liability imposed by this title. A transfer described in the preceding sentence shall not be treated as a sale or exchange for purposes of section 1001. Non-recognition of this subsection shall apply only to the portion to be transferred not exceeding the amount of the liability satisfied thereby. So you can't, there's no loophole. You can't accidentally overpay your entire bill, and somehow abuse that to get some kind of tax preferred treatment. But they do say no gain or loss shall be recognized by a by a taxpayer on the transfer of Bitcoin to the United States. This is a pretty big deal because you could sort of effectively lower, the cost basis sort of your tax bill by using Bitcoin, in which you have a lower cost basis. So pretty attractive from a tax perspective. Otis Freechov says, I would buy fresh BTC to pay taxes if possible. Yeah, that's kind of how I feel about it too. I would sort of like, of course I would probably try to, I would think like, do I think Bitcoin is going to go up in value over the next 6 months? Obviously you wouldn't want to buy it and then wait 6 months and pay your taxes when Bitcoin's at a lower value. Like you wouldn't want to pay it on the tail end of the cycle when we're going from parabolic highs down to the lows. But if you have a good suspicion that the value of Bitcoin were going to go up and you could buy it like 6 months before paying and then pay it, that'd be worth it. Or if you just bought it right before you paid, if you just bought Bitcoin and paid with Bitcoin, knowing that it's sort of like sixes for you, but your tax payments would, dollar for dollar help take Bitcoin out of circulation. That's kind of interesting. I think a lot of people would do that just for ideological reasons. Streetwise is here. Says, what's up, night owls? Yep. A lot of us are night owls for sure. IRS holding it. Wow. Yeah. I mean, who would technically, I guess the Treasury would be holding the strategic Bitcoin reserve in one way or another. So maybe not IRS proper, but basically you pay it into the IRS and it goes into the strategic Bitcoin reserve. So again, this is just a bill. So he proposed this. Maybe nobody will ever vote for it. Maybe nobody takes this seriously. But the fact that it's introduced in Congress means that it's a discussion. It's a discussion all of a sudden. And actually, this is, people have proposed this before. What if crypto is used to pay taxes and those taxes go into the strategic reserve? It's a great way to collect taxes. It's a great way to fund a strategic reserve. But then again, there's like reasonable thresholds for this. If too much of the taxes were paid with crypto, obviously then it might reduce by too much the amount of funds coming into the US government. And if it goes into the strategic reserve, it's not really spendable like normal tax payments would be. So there are some issues. There's some limits on this, but it's an interesting idea. So Robert Scott says, revaluing 261.5 million troy ounces gold to buy 500 BTC a day, also over 5 years, acquiring 1 million BTC. That would be interesting. Anything like that. I mean, basically, I think most of us in crypto are not going to be opposed to the federal government being a buyer of Bitcoin in any way. Like, I don't think and pretty much any federal government or any government, like, I don't care if some village in a non-industrialized country says they're going to buy some amount of Bitcoin. It's pretty much positive for us. So it's all positive. And the bigger the government, the better, right? Because hopefully the more they'll buy. But okay, DVNC says, heard Q1 2026 the market structure bill now. Yeah, I've kind of been suspecting that when last month, when it was clear that it was not going to happen in November, I was like, man, pretty tough in December. If things haven't happened by the very start of December, it's pretty tough. You can get some last minute things before everybody's out, but as soon as it didn't happen in November, I kind of started suspecting it was going to be more like January, February. So in January is kind of a slow start anyways. So, it's like, who knows? Could be February. They're giving XRP and Solana time to become decentralized. It's possible. If I were XRP and Solana, I would be begging for that. You might have seen there were drafts of a Solana constitution floating around today. There was a little bit of that on social media. It was like, oh, all of a sudden Solana's proposing a constitution. That couldn't be because of the upcoming, market structure bill, could it? Streetwise, nobody knows. I know you're saying like you're hoping that's happening because you want to load some bags, but I don't know, man. The night price has been wild. We're going to talk about the night price, but let's move on. But yeah, so yeah, it is accurate though. There is a whole section about non-recognition of gains or losses on the Bitcoin in this bill. So this is the bill. If you want to read more of the bill, this is it. The Bitcoin for America Act. Will it go anywhere? Who knows? Who knows? So what else we got going on today? So speaking of these kinds of ideas, like the previous comment about revaluing 261.5 million troy ounces to buy, 500 Bitcoin a day over 5 years. So here's an interesting video. So this post says Russia just accused the US of using crypto to wipe out its 35 trillion debt. Putin's advisor Kobykov says Washington will shove debt into stable coins, devalue it, and reset the system. This is actually kind of it's kind of a super funny conspiracy theory. Not saying that it's like impossible, but it's like of course, it's like the first thing you would think of. It's the first sort of conspiracy theory that would be like the most evident when you start talking about, like a country like the US adopting stable coins, because the history of adopting new currencies has been that it's a very in-debt government organization that adopts a new currency, and they of course they don't transfer the debt dollar for dollar over before devaluing the old currency. They keep the debt in the old currency, devalue it, and then they pay it off. So of course the stable coin, this is like the first conspiracy theory you'd come to anytime any administration of the US is talking about stable coins. If you're Russia or pretty much any other country, this is the first thing you would come to. And it would be super funny. In fact, one super funny conspiracy theory. Yeah, this poster down here would be a boss move. It is kind of it would be, of course, it would be to the benefit of any country to do this, but it is kind of a conspiracy theory at this point. Mike M says, I'm totally against the illegal IRS creating more tax codes. Yeah, I think we all sympathize with that. I don't think any of us are crazy about more tax regulation. I think we all prefer less for sure. Rulo, Ola, thank you for joining. Thank you for joining. So this is I'm like very amused by this though, because it's sort of like when you watch this this guy who's billed here as Putin's advisor, when you watch him sort of talking about this, it's like it's as if he's talking about something that is certain to happen. And yeah, it's easy to feel the same way as this guy about this. Like it would be pretty awesome if you could pull it off as a country. It's like definitely this kind of, depending on if you're on the receiving end or the giving end of that, you definitely have one of these two faces about that. But coming to some sort of more Cardano proper stuff. So this happened. We are moving forward with the governance action to add a constitutional committee member. We had to get above 51% of SPOs and above, 75% of DReps. I voted for this as quickly as I saw it because we need the extra constitutional committee member to replace the seat of the resigned constitutional committee member. You'll remember they had counted on, they said when they resigned, they had counted on there being some kind of remuneration for the constitutional committee members. And they had said that up front, that if there was no remuneration, they would resign. So they resigned. Fair enough. They said they were going to do it. They did it. And we needed all those seats to be filled in order to pass the critical integrations budget, which everybody's also voting for. So it's great. We got this done. Now we can move forward with the critical integrations budget governance action, because now we have constitutional committee members to actually vote for it. So we're in good shape now. Malo Blessoff says, morning, Scary Monsters. Good morning. Thank you for joining. Good morning. So that was a good sort of weekend development. We also had this. This is kind of interesting. The number of transactions. And by the way, this is from an actual Midnight Explorer. And if you wonder what's on a blockchain explorer before the blockchain launches, it's the testnet. So they say midnightexplorer.com says, just in, the number of transactions created on the Midnight testnet has reached nearly 300,000. That's pretty good. That's pretty good. The testnet has been alive, obviously, but the coin just barely launched. Pretty good. They've already got 300,000 transactions on the testnet. They say, according to our analyst chart, thousands of transactions are being created every hour. The developers are working hard to build Midnight. So I think this is great news. We hope a bunch of developers are building awesome stuff for us, right? It's like we won't get the actual dApps. We won't get the dApps on mainnet until when dApps will go live on mainnet in Kukolu, I think, which is supposed to be Q1 2026. So Kukolu, my notes say dApps go live, Kukolu. So hopefully that's the case. Hopefully we have some awesome new dApps. My hopes are high that the selection of TypeScript as the smart contracting language, well, the compact DSL of TypeScript, but might as well be TypeScript, means a wider variety of developers will consider building in our ecosystem. That'd be great. I mean, I love our current developers and appreciate them very much, but we'll kind of take all we can get, right? Binocamp says the stuff that will be possible will eclipse many things. Are you saying that in terms of, I think you're saying that in terms of Midnight. I think you're right, because privacy is just a brand new world of functionality. It enables a lot of things we've never had before. Is this week going to be bullish for alts? I see BTC dominance dropping. This is Ruandre, and saw someone talking about ribbons going down in BTCD, something that hasn't happened since January. I have no idea. No idea. I don't think any of these indicators right now really. The predictive value in 2025 of any kind of Fibonacci-based indicator, is not very good. I know BTC dominance is something worth looking at. It's kind of an interesting, it is data. It is like interesting data. But whether or not it tells us much in this kind of environment, that's the part I question. I don't think much in the charts has been a predictive value this whole year. So here is the actual Midnight Explorer, the Midnight Blockchain Explorer. And you can see at this point, 362,000 total transactions. Obviously, this is testnet, but you can see it here, last 24 hours. We've got some activity going on. People are building. They are building out our new privacy layer for us. So this is fantastic. I just hope we get one good dApp that just destroys, like, how privacy enables something that is so good. People who don't even want anything to do with crypto want to use this thing. I think that's what crypto needs right now. It just needs one good app, one good dApp that is undeniably awesome, that everybody wants to use, and it's so good they don't even care that it's related to crypto. I think that's what we need. The old adage has always been, and we'll know we succeeded when people are using crypto and they don't even know they're using crypto. I don't even care if it's that, but I hope we get something. I hope we get something awesome on Midnight. We're going to see. Brian Armstrong from Coinbase also said that the U.S. are the closest to making the biggest crypto bill in U.S. history. I sure hope so. I sure hope you're right. That would be fantastic. That would be fantastic. We got this from Charles. Speaking of Midnight, we got this from Charles. 1 billion volume, absolutely remarkable. And you can see here, this looks like we're looking at CoinMarketCap mobile probably here, since we can see, is that his battery level? Is he at 85% battery? Is that what that is? But yeah, you can see 1 billion in volume in 24 hours. Not too bad. Not too bad for a brand new blockchain. DVNC says Midnight could be awesome for decentralized identity. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I hold out hope. As much as I say I fear it's going to be January, February, we have had a couple of members of Congress say, we're going to pass this thing in mid-December. It's going to go to Trump's desk and he's going to sign it. So that'd be an awesome capper. That'd be an awesome capper for 2025 if we can get the Clarity Act passed. But what I hope doesn't happen, I hope there's not so much haste to get this thing passed that they cut out important stuff, right? I hope we don't get one of these things that like guts the bill and it's like, yeah, we tried to go for this, like idyllic decentralization thing, but let's just gut all the regulation and just have a free for all and they just pass it. I hope that's not what happens. I hope we see something that contains the same notions of decentralization that have been present in a lot of the bills we've seen, going back to the first drafts we saw from Lummis and Gillibrand, the Fit 21 Act. They've all had these notions of decentralization. They talked about things like decentralization of validators, decentralization in governance, decentralization in holdings of the coin. I hope we get some notions like that, because if they just gut the bill and the Senate passes it and then the House passes it just so they can say they passed the bill. If we get that, we're going to continue. If we get that, it's probably like too wide open, and you'll continue to have sort of abuses in crypto until regulators or Congress come back in and crack down on us again. We want to get good regulation that is, enough regulation to keep the malfeasers out. We want to keep the bad actors out. We want to put in place laws that keep them from doing the abusive things. And we also want it to be permissive enough that we can do crypto. But I think decentralization is the benchmark for this. It's the key to all this. It's like it needs to have some healthy, robust notions of decentralization. If they sacrifice that part in the bill, then they've kind of opened it up to, sort of like projects being run, completely on servers with centralized ledgers. If they do that, then they're just going to have to come back and we might suffer bad regulation again. We want a good bill, but one that's restrictive enough to prevent the abuses. Yeah, same. Also think we were getting USDC or USDT or both for ADA. Yeah, I mean, that's what we've been told. We've been told tier 1 stablecoin. So that's part of the critical integrations bill. We needed to pass that governance action I showed just a few minutes ago. We needed that to get the critical integrations treasury withdrawal action passed, because we needed the constitutional committee to have enough members to vote on it. So we're in good shape. We're in good shape as of now, as of a few hours ago on that one. So yeah, hopefully, we're definitely going to get the critical integrations budget. We're going to get that money out of there, get it in the hands of the Pentad. And the Pentad, I mean, they're telling us, at least Charles, as one member of the Pentad, as the head of one entity member of the Pentad, he's been telling us tier 1 stablecoin. So I don't think anything else will do. It's got to be a tier 1 stable. But, this is crypto. The definition of tier 1 stable might get the definition of tier 1. That part of it might get a little fuzzy here. We'll see what goes on. Mike M says, no, the Internal Revenue Service is not mentioned in the United States Constitution. True. No, I mean, a lot of executive agencies are not. You know what I mean? It's all the growth of the executive branch is one of the stories in political science, at least political science as applied to U.S. government. It's one of the stories that's sort of like studied by poli-sci professors. They're definitely like kind of entertaining whole classes you can take on the growth of the executive branch. And it's stuff like this, like, where the hell did the IRS come from? That's not in the Constitution. And when you go through the history of it and you hear about how the bureaucracy grew and how the powers of the president, the president can do a lot of things these days they could not do back in the day. Things work quite differently these days than they did back in the day. So Randry says, one good indicator that we bottomed is the Google Trends. It's on massive fear indicators. Yeah, I like that. When, I don't know about, I think Google Trends are exactly what they purport to be. It's a good measure of how much people are searching for crypto. You know what I mean? Whether or not that means a bottom, that's you sort of get into Fibonacci's there. What it signifies is a Fibonacci. It is a measure of something that's very interesting, I think, Dustin Crypto. But what that measure of searching actually indicates, then you start getting into some Fibonacci. So I don't know. Who knows if a bottom is in, if a bottom's not in. I think 2025 should have proved to everybody that none of the indicators were good predictors of what was going to happen in 2025, or else we all would have sold a year ago and come back, maybe now. You know what I mean? It's like we all would have sold. We all would have sold when ADA was above $1, and we would have come back when ADA was in the 30s, you know, like earlier today. So none of us did that. So obviously the indicators did not serve us well then. Robert Scott says, I'm holding my night, selling my dust. We potentially have residual income if we see massive adoption. Yeah, how the dust exchange works is really interesting. And the dust capacity exchange, Charles in his presentation said that was going to launch in Mohalu in Q2 of 2026, the dust capacity exchange. So I'm really curious. I love the fast timeline on this. I love that it wasn't like Cardano, where it's sort of like Cardano was sort of like, hey, we're going to do this thing, Voltaire. You're going to get governance, you know, no timeline. We're gonna do this thing called Goguen. You know, at first it was sort of like no timeline. You know, it's like Rogan after Goguen. You know, there was a timeline on that one, didn't quite work out. But there were all these things. Basho, you know, you're gonna have scaling, but what's the timeline? You know, it's we knew about all these things right at the start in Cardano, which I appreciated. I loved that they ever had a roadmap. You know, but it's super cool with Midnight that there's actually a roadmap and some timing for all this, and it's all this year. It's so awesome. Hilo, December 8th, Kukolu, Q1, Mohalu, Q2, Ua, Q3. Sweet. If it happens like that, excellent, excellent. Pucky Hawk, welcome, welcome, welcome. Robert Scott, my goal as well. My goal as well. Robert Scott says, I'm holding my night, selling my dust. We potentially have residual income if we see massive adoption. Let's see. DVNC says you can't sell dust. So you can't, dust decays, right? If you dispossess it, it decays. But I believe the idea is that big platforms who need the dust are going to have to access the dust somehow. And there is this dust exchange thing, or dust capacity exchange. How that's going to work, I don't know. But I get the impression it's sort of like, you know, we do know that all of our night tokens are going to generate dust. There's going to be dust emissions. And I believe the dust capacity exchange is going to be us sort of like renting out that capacity to generate the dust. Like we can sort of, don't quote me on this, but the recollection I have from Charles talking about this is that we'll be able to designate like, hey, this party over here is going to get the dust that's generated by my night tokens. You know, roughly, very roughly, that's my recollection of how this is going to work. Don't quote me on any of that. I can't really remember, but there's going to be some way to monetize that in the dust capacity exchange. Maybe somebody else here will remember better. You can sponsor dust for transactions though. Okay, yeah. So you're saying the same thing, you know, whether you're designating that somebody else gets your dust for their transactions or you're sponsoring their transactions with your dust, there seems to be this, it seems like there is this dust capacity exchange, whatever verb you want to use, which might be similar to selling. Yeah, it's just like a change of verbs, you know, we're just changing the verbs, selling, designating, sponsoring. If there's money flowing to you and your dust is flowing somewhere else, you know, I think you can use whatever verb you want. Charles shows a good name that people can relate to. Midnight. Yep, that's good. Good for crypto people. I feel like crypto people are probably a little more nocturnal than the, you know, entire population. The whole wide world can relate to midnight. Yep, I think that's true. Bindocam says, me being the consumer whore that I am, I bought something in the color midnight simply because of the confluence. I'm always buying stuff that is the color of midnight, that being black, not midnight blue. In my case anyways, I've kind of always been like that. So I'm with you. I will buy even more blacks. I will choose black even more often because of midnight. Yeah, I mean, Charles wasn't wrong. Rogan didn't happen before Goguen. So Charles, it's not debunked yet. Charles has not been proven wrong. He just said after. This is a very good point. Very legit point. Bindocam says, say a Solana user pays a little extra for a private transaction, DApp processes it and pools distribute the fees to dust contributors. Let's see. Yeah, something like that. There's going to be some kind of a, you know, an exchange that looks something like that. Can you swap it for Sol, ETH, BTC? What are you talking about? Are you asking if there are swap pairs for Night, the Night token, and those other assets? If so, I do not know the answer. Claimed one of my smaller thaws, and it cost 3.2 ADA for redemption transaction. That's a little steeper than I was anticipating. Okay, this is good to know. You're the first person I've seen actually report the transaction fees for a thaw. That's interesting. Okay, thank you for reporting that. I was actually curious to see how much those would be. Here's what Trump needs to do. Executive order stating that each individual pays taxes in an amount that equates to what they can afford to pay, depending on their current affordability case. Yeah, I mean, that's how it starts, right? That's how it starts. I'm sure when they pitched the idea of an income tax, this is exactly how it's pitched, right? Each individual will just pay taxes in an amount that equates to what they can afford. I mean, I'm sure that those words were uttered when they originally pitched the income tax, and now we have, just like whatever it is, hundreds of thousands of pages, and nobody actually understands the entire tax code because it's too complex. So unfortunately, bureaucracy seems to be an integral part of human organizations over time. No matter what, the bureaucracy will grow. I've seen this inside even a startup, and even inside a tech startup. I've seen people go from one meeting where they talk about how bad bureaucracy is, and they go to the next meeting and they are just like a bureaucracy creation machine in the next meeting. In the next meeting, they just like say they ask for 20 things that just create 20 more bureaucratic points of inefficiency. And they don't even realize it. And then you point it out to them and they're like, oh, you're right. That is bureaucracy, which I hate, but we have to do it anyways. And it just grows. It just grows and grows. So let's see. Pucky Hawk says, not a fan of black electronics. Can't find them at midnight. This is a legit point. I have definitely woken up in the middle of the night and not quite been sure if I was looking at a bedside table or the top of a laptop. This is legit. Affordable healthcare. Yep. Taxes are the biggest scam in America. Yeah, I mean there's definitely a contingent in crypto that thinks that. ADA seems to essentially mirror BTC in terms of price direction. Night seems to have not. Yeah. So Night, yeah, it's so Night is sort of the beneficiary. What I was predicting, everybody knows they're watching this channel. What I was predicting was that Night would be the beneficiary of the privacy trend. Night would just surf the privacy trend, just like Zcash has been this year. And that seems to be the case. In fact, let's look at midnight price. We're talking about it. That was my next tab anyway. So Night price now looks like we're at 6.5 cents. So like I keep saying, this is way better than I feared. I had serious fears about what the Night price would be in the first, couple weeks. I was afraid we'd be looking at something much, much worse. And it does seem like it's sort of riding this trend. So, when we saw the Charles post back here, he was looking at a market cap of 820 million and fully diluted market cap of over $1 billion and volume of 1 billion. It looks like currently over the last 24 hours, looking at a volume of, $500 million and a market cap of over $1 billion, a fully diluted market cap of 1.56 billion. So not bad, $1.5 billion fully diluted market cap. I'll take it this many weeks in. And we've got all year to ride the privacy wave as more and more chains keep, sort of like posting about how they're building out privacy. They're doing this with privacy. I mean, it's just kind of like free advertisement for midnight, right? It's sort of like the more they talk about how they're going to build privacy into Ethereum, the more people are going to look to midnight, right? Because it's already there. It's already built. Charles and those guys were kind of just like 5 years ahead of this trend. Can we swap Fibonaccios with Bambardellos? Let's respect the mathematician's name. That's a good point. Fibonaccios is a little harsh. It's a little harsh, But it's so funny though, because they literally draw nacho chips on their charts. I mean, that's the problem. The problem why it has to be Fibonacci's is because they literally draw nacho chips on their chart. That's their main thing. It's like every time if I'm accidentally watching a video and I don't realize they're about to do a Fibonacci, and then all of a sudden I like look away and I come back by my screen and they're like, doing chart stuff. It's like I can just like start a countdown. And it's like how long until they've drawn a nacho, and then pretty soon there's just like triangles all over the screen, and they're like, as you can see, the Ichimoku cloud here indicates blah blah blah. And it's just like, I mean, I have the same exact reaction to it as a fortune teller, doing all the fortune telling tricks. And I respect the dopamine manipulation that they're capable of, because it is a powerful dopamine manipulator, just like astrology is. Astrology, for people who kind of believe or do believe in astrology, it's a powerful dopamine manipulator. Just like Fibonacci's, it's like telling somebody the future allows them to dream of how they're going to use that information to manipulate their position in the future, and that is a potent dopamine manipulator. So I respect the power of it, but it's also astrology for men. So less institutional capture. Okay. You think ADA can go to a $1 if we get what Brian from Coinbase said, if we get tier 1 stables, etc.? So I never make predictions. Because nobody really knows, right? It's like all those dudes who made predictions for 2025, like none of them were right. It's like very few. The same number of them were right as the ones who would just be correct based on, statistical distribution. so I don't believe that anybody can. I don't believe that anybody knows, or that, what any particular person thinks is of predictive value. It's too complicated. There's too many black swan type events that can happen. It's like too many things, too many weird things can happen. Like nobody knew that the Fed was going to announce 40 billion a month in, balance sheet expansion, and that it was going to start on the 12th. Like nobody knew that coming into it. It's just, there's too many variables. If a BTC user needs dust for a transaction, although they pay in BTC, we supply the dust and receive the BTC, what they pay for the transaction. Not sure. I hope that's how it works. That sounds about right. Something like that. There's going to be some kind of exchange. Dust capacity exchange, we know, is a thing. How it works mechanically, I think it's in I believe it's in the white paper. Like, this is something we can look up in the white paper. The most useful thing I ever bought is a white phone case. Suddenly I could see it. This is a good call for the dark, actually. This is a pretty good call. But at the same time, my phone case is going to be black. It's going to be black always. It's always going to be black for sure. You think ADA can go to a $1 this month? Okay, no, that was the same one. I know we've all got PTSD from 2025. 100%. 100%. This was a traumatic year for crypto. Highly traumatic. This was a train wreck of a year for sure. I will be very interested on how Night looks after Japan enters the space in early January with the love they have for ADA, and who knows if this will translate the same for Night. It will be a crazy ride. Yeah, me too. Me too. I mean, Japan, no question. Japan is the home of Cardano. We owe a lot to the early adopters who bought in the ICO, and many of whom apparently many of whom who've held on to their ADA till this day. So that's what I hear. So I think we owe a lot to our friends in Japan. Midnight is sexy like a woman in black lingerie. yeah, that's true. I mean, if Midnight is a woman and she's wearing lingerie, it definitely has to be black. So there you go. Humans, ladies, I know there are ladies out there too. You can imagine, whatever you want, whatever gender you want, wearing black, whatever. I don't know. I don't know. I'm not a woman, so I don't know. But you know what I'm saying. I'm trying to make it accessible for everybody here. Humans have a natural tendency to recognize patterns even in random stimuli. Hello, candle charge. Yeah, that's for sure true. This is what I hate about Fibonacci's. I watch them draw Fibonacci's, and I'm like, you could draw the opposite triangle too. You could totally draw the opposite triangle or hit the top of that candle instead of that candle, and it changes everything. It's like, it's the goddamn astrology, man. It's the tea leaves. Knight is starting to follow BTC and ADA direction. It took a few days. Yeah, it could be. Could be, Nigel. You could be right. One of these days, the title will be Cardano and the Lost Phone. Yeah. Midnight dude thongs for the ladies. I was trying not to. Oh, yeah. I had a feeling it was gonna go there. Okay. Last Gambit. You're right. You're right. Something like that. I was trying not to be the arbiter of the imagery for the opposite gender, but yeah, probably it's something like that. Night banana hammocks, probably something like that. So here's another item. So I thought this was pretty entertaining. Trump, I think he recently gave this speech. It looks like this was posted recently by Watcher Guru. He basically says that inflation is totally neutralized, guys. So forget about the inflation. What I love, the reason why I saved this was because the owl kind of gave him permission, right? It's like I feel like this is how a lot of things happen, how a lot of things work in DC, right? It's like Powell is going to be done. He knows he's out as chairman. In May, he's out of there. So he needs to secure his legacy. So he's like, last week, I'm declaring victory over inflation. Any delta between whatever our current inflation is, because I don't know, because there's no data, because the government was shut down, and 2%, most of that delta is the tariffs. So I'm going to go ahead and say we've conquered inflation, because really without the tariffs, it'd be low 2%, which is always acceptable to the Fed because they never quite hit 2%, right? You've noticed they never quite hit 2%. So then Trump takes that because Powell's basically like, Trump is to blame. Trump and his tariffs are to blame for any inflation at this point. Then Trump turns around and he turns that into inflation is totally neutralized. It's over. There is no inflation. We've conquered inflation. And the way he crafted the message was super entertaining, right? He said, he talked about inflation, and then he said, more people are employed right now, more Americans are employed right now than ever before, which is super hilarious because that could be interpreted as him talking about just the absolute number of Americans who are employed. And given the population growth, natural population growth, the absolute number employed should always be going up, basically. So we don't have as severe a demographic problem as a lot of the world because we've had massive immigration, right, over the last 4 years, which is part of why Trump got elected. But it's kind of amazing. He's like, okay, Powell gave me a green light here, so inflation totally neutralized, and more Americans are employed today than ever before. The way the messaging is crafted is kind of amazing. I can't wait for neutralized inflation in the grocery store and gas pumps. I have seen some pretty crazy, not necessarily in my neck of the woods, but I saw some crazy headlines about some super low gas prices in at least one state. I don't want to say which state it was. But in one state, there were some super low gas prices, which kind of amazed me. But when you damn near get into, a hot war with Iran, it's like Saudis are going to be pretty happy. They'll probably be willing to do if the U.S. is willing to almost get into a hot war with Iran. It's like the Saudis are probably going to be pretty happy to do whatever the hell you want to make gas prices favorable for a while. At least that's been kind of the tenor of U.S. Saudi relations for the last several administrations. It's like when we're pissing them off, magically the gas prices are too high. When we're damn near fighting fighting Tehran for them, they get pretty happy. Last Gambit says red card penalty. Nigel is making these. Is that like a laughing Hulk? Is that a laughing Hulk I'm seeing there? Inflation neutralized. Also just in. The sky is blue and water is wet. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's kind of I like that we at least weave, no matter if they're accurate or not, like truthful or lies, we weave sophisticated narratives around the economy, right? It's like the US bureaucracy, if they're good at, more than nothing, one thing they might be good at is weaving sophisticated narratives to convince everybody the economy is good no matter what's going on. And then, like, 24 months later, they'll talk about how terrible it was, right? It's like, new administration comes in, they're going to talk about how terrible the economy was during the last administration and have so much data. They can make a very persuasive case. The economy was terrible. Look at the terrible economy we've inherited. Sort of like the lower the baseline is. They want to start at a very low baseline. The economy is terrible. And then they just spend 4 years talking about all the wonderful things they've done. And they try to make a case at the end of the administration, how wonderfully they've improved the economy, and then the next administration comes in and they talk about how terrible it was. So it's this great, like, back and forth weaving of a sophisticated narrative around how alternately terrible or wonderful the economy was 4 years ago. So U.S. government, at least they're sophisticated at it. At least it's not, at least the lies are sophisticated. That's the one thing they've got going for them. So I think, this is one of the first weekends where we haven't had some really overpowering news item. I was afraid most of December, most of November and December would be this way. But because we've got the Wild Boys in Washington, there's always something going on. So the previous weekends have all had pretty overpowering big news items. This weekend, not so much. We haven't had like any gigantic news items that were super, super relevant for crypto or Cardano. Binochem says, employer, inflation is down now. You don't need a raise. Exactly. All the inflation figures are cooked. They keep allowing substitution in the basket. 100%. The CPI is like not a reflection of real life. They keep allowing substitutions in the basket of goods that they use for calculations. It has gone from prime groceries to cheap crud. Yeah, I mean, if people don't understand how this works, so when you've got these indexes that purport to measure inflation, the executive branch controls what those agencies do. So if there's an outlier like gasoline, when gasoline goes crazy, right? It's like, what do you do? If the Saudis are pissed at you and they have their way in OPEC, what do you do? And you don't want to reflect that inflation because it looks bad for your administration. You just kick it out of the basket of goods that make up the consumer price index. You're like, gas is out. If milk goes too high, milk is out. That's not a normal consumer good. That's not a good representation of the consumer price index. So you're just going to kick it out of the basket of goods, and then you can totally manipulate them at the inflation figure that way. This is well known. I think everybody knows this already, but you're right, Josh, for pointing that out. The inflation figures are cooked. The problem is you've definitely got the the patients running the asylum a little bit. It's like, if inflation is a measure of how well the executive branch is doing at keeping inflation down, if things like CPI are a measure of that, they shouldn't be the ones keeping track of that. They shouldn't be able to decide. The head of that agency shouldn't be shouldn't be someone who is fireable by the person who's held accountable for that number. But there's also problems with sort of deep state bureaucrats not being fireable by the head of the executive branch. So because the head of the executive branch is definitely voted into office, whereas these bureaucrats are not. And the deep state is nothing if not unfireable bureaucrats. So Knight still not on Coinbase. Wow, they do not love us, dude. Coinbase is not romantically interested in anything going on in the Cardano ecosystem. They do not like us. They do not love us. They are not our friends. They are not down with us for some reason. I don't know. I mean, think about how long it took them to adopt ADA. Like, they didn't have ADA. I mean, the funny thing is, ADA has been a top 10 asset forever. I mean, an interesting thing would be to go back and look, how long was Cardano a top 10 blockchain before Coinbase deemed us worthy of inclusion? You know what I mean? It's like back then we weren't even worthy of being on Coinbase, according to Coinbase, apparently. But they had, now they have a million terrible coins, all kinds of terrible coins on all these centralized exchanges. So, it's not that things have changed, that they are not lusting after us for some reason. Dolphy Wolf is here. Good morning. Good morning. In Europe, the narrative at the moment is Pax Americana times are over. Pax America times are over. We can't count anymore on our transatlantic foreign friends. Is this a case of global divide and rule the masses? So I think this is true. Unfortunately, I think a little bit, to some extent, a lot of people on YouTube will associate this kind of idea with people like Peter Zion, and you might disagree with a lot of the other things he says, but he might be right about this part, that the U.S. is sort of, since the end of the Cold War, the U.S. has had a, diminished and more diminished reason to patrol the world with its blue water navy, right? And if you don't patrol the world if you don't have the US patrolling the world's waterways, the shipping lanes, then you have things popping up like, Yemenis taking ships, Iran boarding ships. You have all these things going on regionally. If nobody is being the world boat police, and the theory is that the U.S. felt like it had to do that during the Cold War because it was kind of buying everybody's cooperation against the USSR. It was buying the cooperation of the whole world against the USSR. The way it was buying that was by guaranteeing that every country in the world would be able to do business on the world markets. And the way we were guaranteeing that was by patrolling all the blue water shipping lanes with the world's biggest blue water navy. Still have the world's biggest blue water navy. China obviously has more boats, but they don't have the big blue water boats that we have. So obviously they're building boats faster than we are. But, the argument is that since the Cold War, there's no longer a reason to do that. And it sort of lasted this long. Obviously the Cold War, arguably ended, under, Reagan, Mr. Gorbachev tear down this wall. Then the wall came down, the Soviet Union dissolved, and everything changed. So the Cold War has been over a long time, and the Pax Americana you speak of kind of continued to exist. And I think a lot of us, would wish that it would continue forever. But it seems that the Peter Zans of the world are probably right, that the U.S. just doesn't have an appetite to do it anymore, and nobody else can really stand up and do it. So in that kind of an atmosphere, in that kind of a context, what happens, you could argue that the world kind of gets segmented into a bunch of regional trading alliances. You can imagine that the U.S. is going to trade with the members of the Five Eyes, plus Japan, plus South Korea, plus Taiwan if it continues to exist, maybe pull in a few countries from Southeast Asia, Europe, a few other allies. China is going to have its own trading bloc, Russia might have its own trading bloc. Turkey might have its own trading bloc. So you can imagine a world where things get broken up into those kind of trading alliances. And, this whole global trade thing we've been doing, can it continue to exist if you don't have world boat police out there with big carriers who can take down anything? You could even argue that drone warfare, as it has existed since the start of the Ukraine-Russia war, maybe drone warfare means that world boat police can't really happen anymore. Because there's some questions. There's some questions about what happens when you send 10,000 $45 drones after a $2 billion fighter jet. You know what I mean? It's like there's questions about how the math works out on that. So Bindocam says Brian's ass must be chapped with how much he drags it when Cardano comes up. I don't really know what it is. Charles would probably have some good insight into this, but I don't know why Coinbase hates us, but they obviously hate us. I was never expecting Midnight to get on Coinbase and won't expect it anytime soon. At this point, I don't think it matters much anyway. Anyone interested in data has other great options for market. Yeah, I mean, thank God we've got Kraken. Kraken has been there for us since the beginning of ADA. Yeah, I mean, they definitely deserve our support. Coinbase does not deserve our support, and Kraken does for sure. Wow, it's so cool that we decreed inflation finished. I know. Why didn't we just decree it finished 2 years ago when it was raging? We should just decreed it finished back then. That would have been the play, right? Let's fucking grow. ADA Night BTC. Yeah, I'll be cool if those grow for sure. Otis Frichov says later fam, fiat mines in the morning, got to get dollars for night. Streetwise says Charles said there's a way for Coinbase to come in a bit later. That is part of the lost and found feature of the glacier drop. When the price is too juicy to deny, Coinbase can go grab the missed night. Yeah, I don't know how that's gonna work. Good thing about Charles, I feel like he's relentless. He's relentless and persistent. So I feel like he would keep trying to get him. He'll keep trying to get him no matter what. That's part of the reason I chose this ecosystem. Betting on the jockey, not the horse. I think the horse, like the technical architecture, is excellent as well, but the relentless, the relentless, the relentless guy, you know, the relentless jockey riding that horse who is just going to keep going no matter what and doesn't want to lose. I like that part. X Last Gamut says, I just wish Trump would grab us by the crypto bags and pump them. I hope he does too. I hope it's the flamethrower scenario. I hope Trump is, I hope he's just got the flamethrower primed. We heard from Scott Bessent, the Treasury Secretary, that Trump might have some kind of a Christmas thing for the country. Might have some kind of a Christmas gift for the country. I keep hoping he's got something. He's got something all primed and ready to go, and it can kick things off. If not, I think the liquidity alone, just having the liquidity in place, will kind of do the trick. I think that's going to be, it pretty much has to be the story. If we're to have a good 2026, liquidity has to be a big part of the story. And we just days ago, we got, December 1st, we got the end of QT. And last week, we got this 40 billion a month expansion of the balance sheet, which is great. T-Rant Davis says Coinbase fees are too high. Never liked the platform. I'm going to Kraken high, and of course, self-custody. Good to hear your voice, bro. Thank you for joining. I appreciate it. Thank you for saying that, and thank you for joining the live stream. I appreciate it. We are in for population contraction, especially without those. Yeah, I mean, we got the whole industrialized world has massive demographic problems. We're all kind of in demographic spiral. The US is much better off only because we can attract population. It's sort of like in a world where all of the industrialized, highly modernized powers are in demographic spirals. And I mean everybody, Japan, South Korea, China, every European country. We're all in these demographic spirals. And the only superpower that seems to matter is being able to attract population. The only other thing that could make a difference is if AI and robotics can be scaled up enough to replace humans. But there's a lot of post-labor economics discussion. And like the only conclusion you can draw, without there being a counter argument to it these days, is that we don't even really know you don't even really know what economics means in a world where there is super scaled up AI and super scaled up robotics. If like Optimus style humanoid robots become cheap and AI is scaled up and it becomes cheap, it's like, what does it even mean to have an economy? If hopefully it's what Elon has always predicted, and it's this world of, hopefully it's this world of plenty, this like bountiful world where there's plenty of everything for everybody, this world of plentitude. So hopefully that's what actually happens. But we don't know. We've never seen it before, right? So we don't really know, because it's not something any of us have ever seen before. So we don't know if it's going to be that, or if it's going to be something, much less preferential. So Rulo said something interesting here. Japan will lead the way with robots replacing humans. They definitely have one of the most severe demographic problems. They do not have nearly enough babies. They don't have nearly enough babies. So they it'd be interesting. That would probably be great if we could see them be the test case and prove out that you can replace humans with robots and AI and fix the demographic problems of an economy. That'd be fantastic to see. Regarding Coinbase discrimination, Brian Armstrong is a fairly intelligent guy, but this is not intelligent, is it? So that's the part I don't get. Brian Armstrong, like, I would love, when somebody mistreats Cardano, or when somebody is like kind of seemingly against Cardano or not, won't help Cardano in any circumstance, it's like very tempting to want to paint them as the villain. The problem is Brian Armstrong seems like an intelligent, reasonable guy. Like, he just seems like, like a hardcore crypto guy who got in, founded like, basically the most important company in crypto, did a lot of smart things, like going public when he did. The part of the rationale for that was always explained as he felt like if he went public, it would be harder for a regulator to shut him down, which is true because then you got all these public investors. And if the SEC does anything to you, it's going to hurt the stock price, which hurts all those American investors. There's some reason to that. There's some logic to that. But he did a lot of smart things. Yeah, I think Brian Armstrong did a lot of smart things, and he definitely seems like a crypto guy. But maybe Charles knows something we don't know, but they definitely aren't doing us any favors. Whatever it is, we can say they're not doing us any favors. Maybe it's just because they're just hardcore Ethereum guys. Maybe they just like love Ethereum. And Ethereum guys, if somebody tells me they're super into Ethereum, the chances that they hate Cardano basically skyrocket, right? Not always, but the chances skyrocket. Cardano is real opposition to his business. That could be, maybe he doesn't want to rock the boat. Maybe he doesn't want anything to mess with Ethereum because maybe Ethereum and Ethereum related assets are, the bulk of the business he does. That's a very good explanation. I could buy into that. Yep, Rulo is here every day. Yeah. Thank you for joining, Pascal, by the way. Thank you for joining. Omar Wright says the influence of sea power upon history. Yeah, it's weird. It's weird to even be talking about sea power in 2025, almost 2026. But when you think about world commerce, it's like, that's how all the goods move around the world. Like, obviously in the Western hemisphere, there are a huge amount of Chinese goods, at retail, and they get here by boat, so it's like the second that the naval shipping gets turned off, all that gets turned off too. S. Walker says, Puppers had a good weekend. Sissy wishes you well, buddy. I wish Puppers well too. I hope he had a good weekend. Rulo, thank you for joining. I appreciate you being here. Very much. So Nigel, I don't think anybody really knows. It's like people I'm sure are already doing tons of Fibonaccios about night. But if you keep track of their Fibonaccios, what they're predicting, it's like they're either going to say it's going to go up, it's going to go down, or it's going to go sideways. And they don't, none of them seem to be right when big things happen. None of them seem to be right beyond the normal statistical distribution, right? It's like I keep pointing out, like, if the Fibonaccios were correct, then everybody who does Fibonaccios would have been, if they were like really predictive, then all the people who do Fibonaccios a year ago would have been like, hey, by the way, the Fibonaccios say 2025 is going to super suck. So sell now at $1.24 or whatever it was. And, come back in 2026, just skip 2025. But very few people were telling us that. Very few people were saying skip 2025. It was the opposite. In fact, people were making a lot of predictions about ADA values in 2025. And none of them that I saw were 39 cents. Yep, that's right. If anybody knew, they would just make that bet and they would not tell us. Yeah, it's like there's a lot of hedging. I mean, really, the people selling you Fibonaccios, they're not selling you predictive intelligence. They are selling you dopamine manipulation. That's what they're selling you. Yeah, that's right. They have a 1/3 chance of getting it. And usually what they do is they say, okay, in this scenario, it's going to go up. In this scenario, it's going to go down. But it could also go sideways. Like most of the Fibonaccios kind of boil down to that. And it's also a lot of like, okay, this indicator, and you know what this indicator means? Often this indicator means this. But it's like the whole purpose is just to hit those dopamine buttons in your brain so that you'll keep clicking on those videos and they can get the views and sell the advertisements to you. That's what's really going on there. So anyways, I think we have covered all of the important news. Like I was trying to say earlier, we didn't have a lot of news this weekend, which was kind of a relief because we've sort of had some like very, desperate, anxious news moments the last several weekends. Like we had like one thing that happened over each weekend. A lot of the preceding weekends that were like very sort of important time sensitive things to discuss, but this weekend was a little smooth sailing. I'm kind of glad we had a smooth sailing weekend and at least not any bad news. S Walker says, I had kind of a eureka moment last night regarding the tokenomics of night and how the sell side liquidity of night might not be overweighted until all token unlocks. Interesting feeling. Yeah, one of the most interesting things about night, the reason why the night price movement is interesting to me is that the glacier drop is novel. The glacier drop is novel. This is not how airdrops have been done. So this is certainly very interesting that we have this 25% of 1/90th being unlocked each day. That's just the average. Some days will be bigger, some days will be smaller, depending on what wallets get unlocked. But it's the price movement is kind of interesting for that reason. There's that, and there's how much boost we get from the privacy, surfing the privacy trend. So that's what is making the price movement interesting to me. T-Rent Davis says, I learned from master trader Joe Ross, just because you draw lines in a chart don't mean jack squat. Very true. Very true. I mean, a chart is data. It's, time and price. Those are, when looking backwards, those are, generally true facts. If it's a accurate chart, you're looking at, some facts, some real data points, but all of the, all of the predictive conclusions people come to based on that data, a lot of that is just astrology for men for dopamine manipulation purposes. Um, so, okay, I think we've covered all the news. I really do feel, let me take this off so people can see it. So I really do feel like, though, we might be in this situation. I feel like the current administration, those wild boys in DC, they do a lot of wild stuff. I, given some of the wild stuff they've done, like tariffs were wild. That was wild. That was something I didn't think I would see in my lifetime, to be honest with you. If you come from, the 90s, then not born in the 90s, but we're like an adult going to college in the 90s, like I was, you're pretty much a free trade guy. We were all free trade guys in the 90s. We all favored free trade. We weren't talking about tariffs. So tariffs are not something I ever thought I would see in my lifetime. And we're definitely seeing, so we're definitely seeing some wild stuff. Those boys in Washington are wild boys. They could do some wild stuff. So they might be standing around. They might have a flamethrower plan. And crypto definitely feels like this giant mountain of logs. And if we just get, if somebody just walks up to those logs of the flamethrower, somebody, I think it was Otis Fricio pointed out above that this little guy with the flamethrower better watch out and make sure the logs don't roll. This is the kind of administration I feel like they would walk up to that pile of logs, the flamethrower, and just like turn the nozzle on, without regard for whether the logs are going to fall or not. But we also probably don't care in crypto. We've been through enough pain in 2025. If somebody will just apply a flame to this giant mountain of tinder and kindling and fuel that we've created, that's probably enough. Now that we're going to have the liquidity, hopefully, and we're going to have the Clarity Act, hopefully. If we can just get those two things, then we might be okay. The chart shows you the market structure. Price moves from level to level. It's easy to draw charts. It's really hard to know which level. Yeah. I mean, well, the chart shows you something. It shows you price and time. How much that tells you about market structure, depends on your definition of market structure. Obviously, the Fibonacci guys want you to believe that it tells you a lot more than I would say it does. And based on their performance, a lot more than their performance would indicate. So there's that. Binochem says dump gas on it first, then light. Yeah. I mean, yeah, whether they want to throw some gasoline on it and light it with a match, or just apply the flamethrower, or gasoline plus whatever, we don't care. Just light it up. But squiggle go up. I don't know about that. It's more complicated than just a squiggle. Yeah. So I think we just need a catalyst. We just need this catalyst. We just need, we need something to kick off the chemical reaction here. We just need something to kick things off. We need a Kickstarter. That's what we need. But I feel like we're in pretty good shape with the liquidity, the regulation. Things are shaping up. Hopefully 2026, much better than 2025. I hope everybody had a great weekend. I hope you're looking forward to a great week, and I will talk to you soon.